Project Gotham Racing is a beloved arcade racing game series by the late Bizzarecreations that is a spiritual successor to Metropolis Street Racer on the Dreamcast. Both are incredibly solid racers and a lot of fun to play, and the series has always had that one-of-a-kind vibe and style of skill-based racing that is considerably unmatched by other street racing games of its kind back then. Fueled with an unforgettable car list with never-before-seen automobiles, great-looking locations, and stylish street racing that you wouldn't find anywhere. However, true to the company's name, they've made some bizarre choices with their games over the years, such as Project Gotham 2 not having a custom race feature of any kind, catering only to the hardcore racing crowd, which is a big disappointment to me. Blur having an uninspiring presentation but fun racing regardless. And of course, not bringing any of their games to Microsoft Windows. I mean, come on. There were so many solid racing games on the original Xbox and 360, and all of a sudden bringing them to Windows was pointless at the time? It's ridiculous. Because there's a bunch of computer players that would absolutely love to have games like these. And there's more to gaming platforms than just consoles. And one of those days, consoles are going to become a thing of the past. And you need to do a whole lot more to preserve these games for future generations, and to put on modern systems, for everyone to enjoy without dedicating themselves to one system. Not everyone has that much time on their hands. Exclusivity sucks, and it always will. Anyway, Project Gotham's last installment was in 2007 with Project Gotham 4, and nobody has heard anything of it ever since. I really don't know if it's due to poor sales or just being forgotten entirely, but it didn't carry over to the next generation of Xbox, which began in 2013 with the Xbox One. Every single racing game out there on the Xbox has already been absorbed to the mainstream juggernaut of racing games, Forza Horizon. Now, to be honest with you, I'm really tired of the Forza Horizon series. It's been going on for far too long, and it was high time that racing game variety would take the spotlight once more. Plus, with every single installment they release, it divides the fan base, kills off earlier games in favor of the new, updated ones, meaning delisting them, and get old every time, especially with the open world. Sure, you can recreate those same experiences that you know and love in Forza Horizon, but it isn't the same. So when are we going to get racing games less like these, and more like these? There is hope in the air that we will finally get racing games that don't focus too much on being a unified experience, and focus on bringing back a well-loved style of racing that gamers loved back then into the new generation. We already have too much simulators as it is, and we want to have that sophisticated simcade feeling return to the mainstream, and have the respect it deserves. That means fast-paced arcade-style racing, but with a lot of depth in the vehicle handling and physics that will make you feel like you're driving the real-life car that you always loved, but fitting with the unique style and coding that those arcade racing games had to offer, while staying true to the real-life performance data and vehicle handling, with Grid and especially Project Gotham. So in this video, I'll show you ways that Project Gotham Racing can finally be brought back for another installment, or at least a spiritual successor, and bring back Project Gotham's unique style of racing that has been missing in the mainstream for many years. Let's hit the road. First and foremost is the gameplay. The two developers that I have in mind are Boss Alien Games and Milestone. The former being a developer of CSR, a drag racing game series with a lot of licensed cars, but myself having no interest in the drag racing genre. And Milestone, an Italian racing game developer famous for many kind of motorcycle games, like MotoGP, Ride Series, motocross racing games like Monster Energy and MXGP, 5 rally racing games, the 4 WRC racing games and Sebastian Loeb's rally game, and other unique racing games like Hot Wheels Unleashed. The one that comes close to the Project Gotham style is Evolution GT, featuring a variety of licensed cars and also features city tracks which you can race on, so you can recreate that same experience somewhat. So, of course, they have a ton of racing game experience under their belt. So I really want them to recreate the Project Gotham Racing 3 and 4 gameplay physics code for code, because I believe they are peak games for the series. But you can choose to base off the gameplay and vehicle handling from Metropolis Street Racer, Project Gotham 1, 2, 3, or 4. You decide. How this can be done is either Boss Alien Games can recreate the Project Gotham vehicle handling and skill-based gameplay, while bringing all their cars from CSR into the new project and update them to the highest detail they can give it, or go indie and bring them to a very adequate detail up to the standards, modern standards of today, without making it look like a AAA game. Or Milestone can attempt to recreate this as well. As I said before, Milestone has a lot of racing game experience under their belt. They did a really good job for the arcade-style gameplay of Hot Wheels Unleashed. But they can take a stab at another simcade racing game with licensed automobiles, while of course using the up-to-date Unreal Engine, or another proprietary engine. Either or. I feel that these two developers can get the job done. Another thing is the field of view, or FOV. It has to match the same style as Project Gotham. That when you're accelerating up to speed, the camera position behind your car is static, and it doesn't pull back when you're accelerating up to top speed like the Need for Speed series or Grid series. Project Gotham is its own thing when it comes to the camera. This is the old school way of racing games, and I still feel you can get a good sense of speed and control out of these things. The second is the cars. Classic and some modern racing games that I know have awesome car lists full of famous production vehicles as well as never-before-seen ones, such as the Asphalt Urban GT games, yes, including the new ones, Gran Turismo, Classic Test Drive Unlimited, Need for Speed Hot Pursuit, Project Cars 3, Drive Club. There are so many racing games, both arcade and simulation, that have a great selection of vehicles to choose from. Since I'm continuing to mention Boss Alien and Milestone, CSR 2 has an awesome car list featuring favorited vehicles both old and new. So it would be good to use that in a project like this. For the types of automobiles that you would love to get behind the wheel for, you would have a mixture of vintage vehicles like the Lamborghini Miura, the Mustang Fastback, the Lancia Stratus, a great selection of late 90s sports cars and roadsters from all regions like Metropolis Street Racer did, like Porsche Boxsters, Alfa Romeos, Opel Speedster, and JDM masterpieces like Subaru, Mazda, and Toyota, sleek, sporty favorites like Ferrari, Pagani, Mercedes, BMW, Ford, and Chevy. The possibilities are endless. There is, of course, never-before-seen production and concept vehicles, because that is one of the reasons why Project Gotham is a legendary series in the first place, because of the inclusion of such vehicles. Examples include the Delfino Feroce, the Ford GT90 and Cobra concept, and the Trident Isseni, which exclusively appeared in Project Gotham 2. Some concept vehicles that I like to see make a return to gaming, like some from Italdesign like the Nazca C2, ID90 for Bugatti, the Shigera for Alfa Romeo, the ME412 from Chrysler, the GTR 50 for Nissan, the Dodge Copperhead concept, some from Tommy Kaira, or even Mitsuoka's Orochi sports car, which appeared in a few classic JDM racing games back in the day. Sheesh, I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly. This would also be the chance to have automobile makers debut or return to the virtual racetrack on consoles, like Isdera, Caparo, Bertone, Gambala, Marcos, Mosler, Torodion, and others, just to bring in more exposure. And race cars, yep, let's not forget about race cars, as these high-powered machines are thrilling to drive on the streets. My favorites include the Porsche 911 GT1 993, which recently appeared in The Crew, Celine S7, the DBR9 from Aston Martin, Toyota GT1, and the Radical race cars. Some of my picks for cars to be added include the XJR15 from Jaguar, the Panos GTR1 with the race car spoiler, the Corvette CR race cars, race cars from the Japanese Grand Touring Championship without racing liveries, the BMW V12 LMR, etc. So those are just some of my picks of which vehicles would be perfect for the Project Gotham installment in the future, or a spiritual successor. So no matter where your tastes lie in automobiles, you can be sure that this series had something for everyone, just as long as you give gamers the freedom to enjoy them how they like. Next is the presentation. If you want the user interface and presentation to be colorful and in your face, this is the place you want to be in. First, you'd want to have an intro that gets you pumped up to race, and not something like the Project Gotham 2 intro. See, that really doesn't cut it for me. But the first intro, the intro of the first Project Gotham Racing, boy, that gets you pumped and ready to race, because the action-packed racing that the game provides is in your face. And of course, we all know how awesome the third and fourth game's intros are with its great music. Speaking of music, you'd also want to have an ensemble of artists well loved within the community. Some of the music artists that I'd like to see compose music for the Project Gotham successor or spiritual successor include Richard Jacques, Rom DePrisco, Matt Reagan, Jeff Dyke, Crispin Hands, Andy Hunter, Mick Gordon, T. Lopes, and many others. Richard Jacques can also be brought back to compose tunes that have the same feel as the catchy main menu music for Metropolis Street Racer, which he did, by the way. And Prisco, Reagan, Hands, and Dyke for their incredible compositions of the classic Need for Speed titles. And they would be fitting for Project Gotham, composing some rock and trance music that would fit the action-packed, skill-based racing that the series provided. Andy Hunter with its awesome electronica tunes, and Mick Gordon, let's just say he's pretty versatile, with heavy metal and electronica that sounds super catchy and appealing no matter the game. A mixture of licensed tunes and original music compositions is what makes the game very memorable, and for bringing back a prolific game series, it would be no exception. And lastly, the tracks. The circuits in Project Gotham Racing mainly take place in cities, one of the series' main unique ingredients. And more importantly, this is the part where open world maps take a back seat. They aren't even worth mentioning here in this video because today's racing game genre is an oversaturation of open world nowadays, and this is to return to the roots of closed circuit racing in metropolitan cities. No open world, no exploration, nothing. Just circuit and point-to-point routes that are sometimes enclosed based around famous landmarks and exciting roads to race on. Much of the cities that Project Gotham took place in include San Francisco, New York, Tokyo, London, Sydney, Hong Kong, Washington, D.C., Chicago, Macau, and many others. And let's not forget the only racetrack in Project Gotham, the Nürburgring Nordschleife in Germany, first appearing in the second game all the way to the fourth. A majority of these cities that you know and love can return with fresh new circuit and point-to-point routes. But there are also other cities worth adding to the Project Gotham lineup. My picks include Mexico City, Munich, Germany, Copenhagen in Denmark, Dubai, Singapore, Denver, Colorado, Miami, Florida, Toronto, Canada, Cuba, and many others. The track list would mostly compose of circuits and point-to-point routes and roads in famous cities all across the world, with a couple of closed professional circuits and winding alpine road routes thrown in there for good measure. But of course the track list will 90% be metropolitan, hence the series name and signature ingredient. And something to note before I close out this video is that game modes is also another important ingredient to cater to both casual and hardcore players alike, without a tremendous focus on online play and exclusive career modes. Aside from a very deep career mode and time trial mode, you also need other things to do when you're racing with AI racers by yourself. Custom race/custom event modes or features, of course, is paramount to a racing game's replay value for solo play. Metropolis Street Racer had it. Project Gotham 1 did not bring back the quick race freedom of its spiritual predecessor. Project Gotham 2 didn't have it at all, which makes it my least favorite installment in the series because of such an unbelievably disappointing lack of such a feature offline.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
3 and 4 had it, with the latter meaning you can't pick custom paint jobs for AI racers. We not only want hardcore racers to enjoy it, but casual racers too. I consider myself to be the latter, so these kinds of features are very important to a game's longevity. Project Gotham 2 was the perfect example of over-delivering in terms of cars and tracks, but under-delivering in terms of single-player game modes. They catered way too much to the hardcore or online racing crowd. And if the game didn't do that, then we would have had a good game here. The later installments didn't have the big variety of unique vehicles and cities like the second game does, but every issue that I had with the second game was fixed and was insanely replayable offline regardless of your game progression status. You can race for fun with your favorite cars and tracks without worrying about campaign or progression interference. If the next Project Gotham game or spiritual successor has a big number of single-player game modes that cover every facet of the driver or gamer's needs and keeps them occupied for hours on end, then the replay value would be fantastic and healthy. So that's about it. This video is merely my idea of how they should bring back the Project Gotham series, or at least make a spiritual successor to it that brings back incredible memories that we have for these games for so long, but in a new light, and free us from the unified Forza Horizon burnout that we were all feeling. Sure, Forza Horizon has its place, but it was high time for something different and nostalgic. The only hope was that, or reverse-engineered PC ports of console-exclusive racing games that we loved very much, but playable on Windows 10 or 11 with its native specs. That includes Rally Sport Challenge 2, the best racer on Xbox, Midtown Madness 3, Sega GTO 2 and online, Circus Drive, Apex, and others, because their playable emulation statuses are long overdue. And that wraps up the video. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, feel free to leave one. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking the video and subscribing for more entertaining content. Thank you for your time to watch this video. Happy racing, and see you next time.